everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Olivia and I'm here with a new video finally. I'm sorry it's taken me so long. I've just had a lot of stuff going on, nothing bad, but I just haven't had time to film / been in the mood to film. So again, I apologize and thank you guys for being patient. In this week's video, I'm going to be talking about a topic that's most likely going to be difficult to watch and listen to. So I just want to put this disclaimer in the beginning that if you're not comfortable with hearing details about what is technically a sexual abuse case, then please skip this video. So what is the topic of this video? The topic of this video is grooming. Now, I'm going to share what grooming is and then my personal story about how I was groomed. So I actually did not know the term grooming up until a couple weeks ago when I watched a series on Hulu called A Teacher. I was watching it just because it looked like an interesting show. It hit home because I was like, holy crap, this happened to me. I had no idea it had a term. I knew something like had happened to me when I was younger, but I didn't know it had a term. And so now that I know it has a term and that there are other victims, I feel like I want to share my story to try to help other people recognize it much earlier than I did. First, what is grooming? Grooming is a process where an adult, such as a teacher or coach, will gain the trust of and form an emotional connection with their intended underage victim, sometimes for the purpose of starting a sexual relationship with them, whether physical or digital, or to exploit them and take advantage of them in some way. Now, even though most people, when they think of grooming, they think of an adult grooming a younger child and minor, that's not always the case. You can be groomed as an adult too. So anybody can be groomed, anybody can be a groomer, and everybody's situation is different. Grooming is actually a form of sexual abuse, and it's a form of intense manipulation. A lot of times, if you're a victim of grooming, even though you literally are a victim, oftentimes we consider ourselves responsible and we feel guilty for what happened to us. I know even today, 10 years after my grooming, I still feel guilty and embarrassed and very ashamed of what happened, and I still have a hard time wrapping my head around the fact that it was not my fault. A YouTuber by the name of Katie Morton, who is a therapist, she made a video about grooming and she lists 7 steps to what grooming is and how it happens. And not everybody experiences these 7 steps or in this order or anything like that. So don't think that if you didn't experience all this, you're not a victim. But I just wanted to go through this with you because I thought it was a really awesome list. Step 1. Identifying a victim. The groomer will identify their victim, often by age, looks, or by how vulnerable they are. Step 2, they will gain their victim's trust, usually by small things like maybe helping out with homework or giving them a ride home from school. Step 3, they will fill a need for this victim, such as letting them know they're important, giving them gifts, giving them attention. Step number 4, isolation. The groomer will begin to isolate their victim, such as taking them on trips or taking them on rides. Step number 5, secrecy. The groomer tells their victim nobody can know about this. Step number 6, sexualizing the relationship, even in small ways, such as hugs. Step number 7, controlling the relationship. A groomer will make their victim think that they are in a loving and caring relationship by making them feel special, giving them lots of attention, maybe giving them gifts, making them feel wanted and loved and needed. And this oftentimes contributes to why the victim feels that it's their fault, because they will welcome this attention or gifts. And I know I welcomed the attention. I loved feeling special. And I think that's why still to this day, I have a hard time understanding that it is not my fault. And grooming can be from the littlest of things, and they may not seem like anything until you add them all up. And then all of a sudden you see a big picture and you're like, oh, So now my story. I have never ever told anybody the full story. I've never even said out loud to myself the full story. So this will probably be hard because I am so embarrassed and ashamed this happened. And it's been 10 years since the start of this, and I'm still so embarrassed. That's why I haven't even told my, the people I trust the most in my life. When I talked about it with my therapist, I didn't even tell her the whole story. So I have quite literally never ever told anybody the full story. I was groomed by a coach of mine, and this all happened 10 years ago when I was 14, 15. And at the time, he was 21. Just like most grooming situations, this started out completely innocent, at least to me. He was my coach. He became my favorite coach. We had fun when he was coaching me because he was funny and I liked to laugh. And he taught me how to be a better player of my sport. And he just, I thought, was a really awesome coach. A little bit into the season, we started texting. And it quickly became texting 24/7. I mean, I would literally pull all-nighters texting him while he was at his night job. I've never pulled an all-nighter for anything else, not studying, not partying, but I pulled all-nighters to text him all night. He would most times, like 9 out of 10 times, start the conversation through text. It's not that like I was not texting him on first on purpose, it's just I was in school, he wasn't, and so he would text me while I was still at school. And I would be so excited to get off of school to be able to text him back. He became my best friend. We had a lot in common. He would call us twins because we kind of thought the same way and had the same interests. And so of course I latched onto him because I thought he got me. And this time was the worst time in my life. And so he was somebody that I trusted and could confide in, and I thought, really cared about me. After the season was over, we continued our texting, and then we started doing stuff outside of practice, obviously because it was over and there was no more practice. He would pick me up from school and take me home or take me to my dad's shop. He would pick me up and we'd go get a bite to eat and then take me home. He knew my whole family. My family knew him. They trusted him. I trusted him. He even at one point took me to a football game, professional football game. It was his team versus my team, and I had like the time of my life because my team won, and so I got to make fun of him, which I love joking around with people. At the time, it was like one of the best days ever. Looking back on it 10 years in the future, I understand why some people thought it was weird. People would tell me like, that's weird that you went to this game with your coach. And I completely didn't understand. I was like, what's weird about it? We're friends, who cares? Now I realize why it was weird. Not long later, he started ending his texts like at night with "love ya." And I'd say it back because he was my friend. Yeah, love ya. That's what you say to friends. Love ya. It was innocent to me. Then he started calling me pet names like Buttercup or Honey, things like that. I loved Buttercup. That was my favorite one. I'd say it was about 9 or so months after I met him and we started having this friendship that he somehow got me, so manipulated me into telling him I had feelings for him. And I don't think I even realized at the time that I did, but somehow he manipulated me into admitting that, and then I realized that I really did. And I'd tell him like, I can't like you because you're in a relationship. He was in a long-term relationship. Like, you found your person, you found the one. Like, I can't like you. And he would always say like, I didn't necessarily find the one. And so he would like give me like slivers of hope. And he then began to tell me that he, liked me back. And so even though I knew what we were doing was wrong because obviously of the age difference, and then because he was in a long-term relationship, I didn't care because I was so obsessed with him. He was like my drug. I could not not think about him. I was completely addicted to him because I was 15 at this point, and he was my like first love, first crush. And you know, when you're that age, you have hormones and everything, your body's going crazy. And so like people often say like your first love is like your most intense, and so he was my first love. And like I said, I was completely obsessed. He'd tell me he wasn't happy in his relationship and he wants to be with me, and the only reason he can't be with me is because of the age difference and it's not allowed. So he would just continue to like pull me in and make me feel like this was a real relationship. I fell so hard for him. I mean, like flat on my face hard. And again, looking back on it, I'm like so disgusted with myself that I did, because I now see that none of it was real. But at the time, I was extremely depressed, and he was like this light in my life. It wasn't long before the texting became like very flirtatious, and he would end his goodnight text with "love you" spelled out. Sometimes "I love you." So it went from like "love ya," like, you know, like you say like to a friend or something, to "I love you," like very serious. You say that to your romantic partner, "I love you." And oh, it made me feel so good. Like, oh my gosh, butterflies, everything, you know. I would save the text messages and stare at them all day, like if I was having a bad day, and just reread them. I mean, like, you can see how I'm embarrassed. Like, that's so pathetic. Eventually, the relationship turned sexual. Never physically. After the relationship became more than a friendship, I never again saw him in person. So this relationship was never physical, thank gosh. But it was sexual in an online form. There was sexting, and it's something that I'm extremely ashamed and completely unproud of and embarrassed. At the time, it was a thrill, and again, it was like my drug. I was completely addicted. So fast forward years, I'm now 17. This is how long this went on. This went on years. I'm 17, and he texts me and he tells me his girlfriend cheated on him, and he's gonna leave her, and he wants to be with me and start a life with me. I'm just like, oh my gosh, my dream's coming true, oh yay. He asked me to go to Disneyland with him. He's like, I need to get my mind off things, I'm sad, like come have a fun day at Disneyland with me. And boy did I want to, but I couldn't. I had something else to do, and literally thank the Lord that I had something else to do, because if I had gone there, who knows what would have happened. After that, he became more distanced, and he, you know, wouldn't text me back. He'd leave me hanging. I then was starting the conversations because he just kind of left me in the dust, and it infuriated me. I was so upset because, again, he was like my drug and I was not getting my fix. It got hostile and bad from there because he would never tell me what I wanted on purpose to make me upset, and I would scream and yell and write the nastiest messages on purpose because I wanted a reaction out of him, and I never got it. I never got it. It was all on purpose. He was doing it to be a dick and to manipulate me. After he messed with my heart for like a month or two, I go on Facebook and I see a post from him, and it's him kneeling in front of his girlfriend. He asked her to marry him. I don't think I've ever been so crushed. I literally wanted to die. I've never felt so awful. It was like my world just came crashing down, and it was like somebody just took a knife to my heart. I was so sad and so depressed. To this day, I don't like when people get proposed to. It makes me uncomfortable. And I never like really understood why. I'm like, this is supposed to be a happy time. I should be happy for them, but I'm not. And that's terrible to say, and I know it's terrible to say, and I feel bad that that's what I feel, but it's goes back to that. It's like having PTSD from opening Facebook and seeing that. And now when I see anybody else get proposed, my mind goes back to that. Finally, one day I realized I was done feeling like this and I needed to stop. And I told him, like, nicely actually, like, this is bad for my mental health. I'm like literally so depressed and I'm in the worst time of my life. You know, please never text me again. And he wouldn't. And then he'd creep back in. He'd go 9 months without texting me, and then he'd send me a text like, I'm thinking about you. I miss you. My life isn't the same without you. I realize how important you were to me in my life. And I would get sucked back in again. I fell for his lies over and over and over again. It's like, you know, what's that saying? Like, the definition of stupidity is doing the same thing over again and expecting a different result. And that's what I did. So, like, super stupid. I feel super stupid that I fell for all of this for years. It's 10 years later, and I'm still suffering from the damages and the mental toll this took on me. Here I am literally 10 years after it started. Not 10 years since it ended, but 10 years after it started, and I'm still not over it. He just like dug his manipulative claws so deep in me that they're still not all the way out. The wounds have still not fully healed. You know, I was reading stories about people who it's 20 years later and they're just now getting over it finally. So I guess I'm halfway there. And looking back on it too, I had no idea I was autistic at this time. I was still, you know, 10 years from finding out I was autistic. And so when you think about it, it's like this happens to neurotypical people. And I feel like autistic people are even more vulnerable because we can't read social cues properly. So here he is having an inappropriate relationship with me, and I didn't understand that. Like, I didn't understand he was flirting at first and things like that. Just, I had no idea. I had literally no idea. Other people could see it, I couldn't see it. And people would even tell me, like, you know, like, that's, like, weird. And I'm like, no, it's not. He's not doing anything weird. I could not read the situation properly. A lot of times, you know, autistic people are naive for our ages, and I definitely was. I had no idea, like, what any kind of, like, sexual stuff was at that point in time. A lot of times, you know, autistic people don't have a lot of friends and they can be lonely. And so here comes this person into their life treating them like they're a princess and they're incredible and giving them all this special attention. So, like, yeah, we're gonna latch on to that person because we haven't gotten that and we want that. Like, we're craving that and we don't know we're craving it, but we are. Also, autistic people a lot of times relate more to adults. Like, I know I did. Like, I had my friends in high school, but I preferred to hang out with adults. He was an adult, so it was just natural. Like, yeah, I like hanging out with older people. He's older. Perfect. Cool. Again, I never saw that as weird. This was just another adult that I was friends with. But obviously this one had a much more sinister turn. If this happened or is happening to you, please know it is not your fault and you can get help. Obviously, I don't think it's talked about enough because I literally didn't know about it until a couple weeks ago. Again, I knew what had happened to me was not right, but I didn't know it had a name and was happening all the time.